Hi everybody, that was my thing. Welcome to another Academy Live, and we're starting 6 weeks of commercial photography. And this week is all about food and the introduction in getting going with lighting with food photography. If you're not familiar with the Photographer Academy, we're an online training resource for photographers. We've been going for about 13 years. We've got over 3,000 kind of films online ready for members to stream. Subscription based, about 59 quid a year. You can kind of join us, but we do these live sessions so that you know the truth of the image. We've always believed, or I've always believed, as that if I'm demonstrating, I need to show you the honesty, and there's no kind of real work going on in the likes of Photoshop and so on with it. Today already we've created around about 5 different new food films for the Academy, which will be dripped through over the next few weeks and months. But remember, you can join me here live every Wednesday at 5-ish UK time to actually get some more tips and tricks. Okay, we are live, so it means that you can do questions towards the end of the session without any trouble at all with it and things really, but otherwise we're going to go run through it. Remember, he's holding up a sign that says Promote Photographer Academy. I thought I just did that. Anyway, we're talking about lighting for food photography. So what I've done, in fact, we've set up kind of different lighting in here. Just before we went live, we also added in a fluorescent, as is basically the different kind of light sources. It's really down to you what you decide to use. I'm going to be a little bit struggling because of this camera one here. A minute. Let's try and get this in the back. But when we're looking at the difference in what lighting to invest into to become a food photographer, the first thing I would say is, do you really need it? Many food photographers, sorry for showing me my butt a minute, but I just want to get these things ready, all right? So many photographers start their food photography career or even passion with just a window light, and that is where I'd obviously recommend you to start. You know, go and buy yourself a little tin of tomato soup, get some cream as well, do a little bit of a swirl, blob in there, quick swirl, take a photograph. I mean, that's the first thing that you can do to become a food photographer, is start to take foodie images. I really don't care if you're using your iPhone, DSLR, whatever it is, you know, at hand. You just need to make it the best that you can physically do. When I'm looking at lighting for my food photography, I'm usually looking at a light coming in from behind, and it's usually big and broad and soft, to simulate a daylight window. And the reason I do that is that because in the commercial world, you're probably having to start to shoot at 8 a.m. and you're having to finish at 8 p.m. or the likes of. And you need to get 20, 30 shots done in a day perhaps, especially when you're working at the likes of a hotel, a restaurant, cafe, bar, whatever. You might be kind of propped up in a corner and you've got to minimize your kit. But the first thing they really need to do is absolutely deliver the same shot from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that is where we look at artificial lighting in some way. When I refer to flash, I'm referring to kind of any form of strobe, whether it's on camera or whether it's going to be a professional kind of studio flash and so on. Let's face it, when we start to look at the likes of lighting, even some kind of little cheap inspection lights that you can buy on a forecourt of a garage when you're filling up with fuel, or you go to the likes of a motor store, and you'll kind of find these things, and they're all around. And inspection lights are kind of one of the cheapest things that, as a food photographer, kind of just never pass up a good opportunity to buy something for next to nothing. You know, £2. The batteries have been there for years now, and basically just switch them on and off and things really. So again, you know, look in your local stores, look for kind of inspection kind of equipment or little flashlights and so on. So today we're not talking about the positioning of your camera. or we're talking about styling or whatever it is, just before we went live, and sorry about beginning late, but literally the pizza wasn't cooked. We didn't think that we could start the film without the pizza in place, yeah? But Honor's brought in a chopping board and a kind of little copper knife and fork and a little bit of a kind of a pizza wheel and so on. But we've created a really kind of a sexy image that pretty much anybody can shoot. I chose Speedlight to get going today, and behind this little soft box is a normal speed light. These two are linked together, so the speed light on camera is telling this one to fire and fire at this amount, and that's basically it. I've gone for a little egg crate on the front here just to control the light, because let's face it, when I start to actually put the big girl to work here, yeah, the amazing light that this kind of background creates, it's really going to give me that lovely afternoon sunny day. For me, the image that we're looking at now basically is all about the flash. What do I mean by that? Well, if I basically turn these off, yeah, and the only thing that is going to technically fire is our speed light. Okay. Oh, didn't fire. Let's do it again. There we go. It'd gone to sleep. So that is creating a very evening style of image. It's dark, it's moody, it's low key. If I took the softening off the actual speed light itself, it would basically give me a bigger, broader light source. If I bounced it off a wall, it would do exactly the same thing again. But what we've got going on here is a controlled light. It's creating a sexiness as well, but we need some help. So if I've only using one light, in all these kind of shots we're going to be doing, we're only going to be using one light anyway. The next bit of lighting kit that you really need is the likes of some card, and some card that you're going to cover in aluminum foil. And the first thing we'll do is actually use some white card, and this is going to be just out of shot. We're just using these kind of studio clamps to just allow it to rest. The great thing about the studio clamp is I can raise the card up. Can that be seen on screen as I just raise that up, yeah? So it can kind of raise down and change its shape and so on. The only thing it can't do is lean in. As far as the setup is concerned, I'm using a 50mm lens. We've chosen f4. I'm tethered tools. This is a tether cable, yeah, from Tether Tools, into a basic laptop with it. And now what that little bit of a reflector is doing is just adding a little bit of fill into the shadow. If you find it's not enough, okay, you'll probably either got it in the wrong place because it hasn't got a chance to reflect the light. Watch now, watch the front edge of the pizza. Even though it's out of focus, that will just lift just that touch. But if I want more, I can basically add in that little bit of a chrome, or the kind of the foil, and that will allow a little bit more return of light. And you can see that crust right at the front, even though it's out of focus down here, that has really kind of come live and so on with it. If I need to increase my aperture, one of the great things about the likes of speed light, especially if you're running in TTL mode, as you change your aperture from f4 to f8, if the flash has got enough power, then obviously you can kind of increase your depth of field straight away with it. So if you've got a speed light, yeah, that's one of on-camera flash things. This wasn't actually firing, it was telling that light to fire, okay? And that is basically the essence of that shot that we've just got. Okay, let's look at my favorite light next, yeah? So this is going to be a light to simulate. Let me just grab a drink a minute. It's so warm in here today. So this light is going to simulate daylight. So the first thing I've got to do is make sure it fires. Meter would be good. And we're going to meter the light source. Now, all that professional studio flash does, it's reliable. It's got a modeling bulb as well, perhaps. But what it's going to do is allow us to, whoops, he says trying to function group 1, group all, because there's nothing else firing. F11, so that's way, way too hot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've just gone down 3 stops, yeah? So when I kind of click now, we're back to F4. We're ready to rock. So this is going to give me a big wash of light. And this is going to give me a lot more kind of location, kitchen, afternoon glow, and so on with it. It's going to need a little bit more kind of help as far as the backwash is concerned, because this light at present, I want to actually just kind of add too much light coming across the table, and just that little bit more onto the pizza itself. I just increase that by half a stop. So remember, I'm shooting, as a rule of thumb, about 125th of a second. We're working on the aperture, I said already, is f4 with it. Let me just recompose that. But we've got this lovely, lovely kind of afternoon glow. And when we kind of compare it to the speedlight image, it's a totally different look and feel, all right? So that is going to give us a great look no matter what. What's next? Let's go LED, yeah? So I've got a little bit more of a kind of a professional LED light. I wonder if you can whip downstairs and get the cheap, real, I call them the Chinese LEDs, but I think everything is made in China anyway. But you know the grey one, do you mind? Sorry, bud. But I'm on about cheap as chips. This is a couple of £100. And it'll do a job, but now of course we're metering in camera because there is no flash going off. So if I stick or I turn the flash off, I basically just get it in on the pizza. If I want to maintain my same f4, I've basically got to decrease my shutter speed. So now this is technically aperture priority. I've told it to fire on f4. That's really what it's doing. You can see the colouring. Well, I can change the colour balance on this as well. So I'm back to full white. I could have changed the colour on camera if that's what I want. But you can see we're technically getting a little bit more of a contrastier light. And the reason being on that is because it's just directional, okay? Whereas we used the softbox before, we had this lovely kind of reflectancy. Thanks, Brand. Cool, mate. Thanks. I just shot this in 2 shots. Have you gone to screen? Do you want to have a look at that? Are we on screen? So this was the shot before we changed the color balance on the LED, and this is obviously the corrected white light kind of thing with it. Ignore when it says proofing on the top, there's nothing going on. But again, what we've maintained is the same aperture for the depth. The only thing we've done is actually change the shutter speed, which you can actually just tell down in the bottom left-hand corner. So when we look at the image that we did with the speed light, you can see that it was shooting at 125th of a second f4. Not sure how easy that is to see on the screen there, Brandon. Then obviously when we were photographing with the big light, 125th at 4 again, and now we're back to the aperture priority, so it's basically f4 and it's shooting at a 13th a second. Remember the difference between aperture priority. I'm in manual mode. I'm technically explaining to you aperture priority. In other words, I set the aperture that I want, and then basically I've metered to give me the exposure that I need. If I did that in an automatic aperture priority way, I would set the aperture and then it would kind of make everything else mix. So remember, if you've got any questions about anything to do with flash or LED or the Academy or even the food photography, then please get them in live and so on. So that's a kind of a nice, easy one, but that's an expensive bit of kit, yeah? Brandon just ran downstairs unexpectedly to get my first entry-level LEDs. Now, these were technically video lights, yeah? Really struggling to get a light in position because of this camera. Do excuse me for a minute. Notice that pretty much all of the light is coming in from the back. I have to move that out of the way a minute. There we go. Let's move that in. Move that around to there. It's a lot easier without video, yeah? Okay, so there's our 400 or 300 pound model. That's the kind of Manfrotto one, yeah? This is the 50 pound one, doing pretty much the same job, but absolutely horrendous in color. It has a slight adjustment in color, but it's nothing to actually get excited about at all. Remember though, we are running in a very directional hard light. The difference being between that professional bounce light that we had, and what we're looking at here is obviously we had a big light source, and now we've got a very, very strong directional light source with it. So once more, if I just meter in towards here now, I need about another third of a stop to get the same exposure. The color is not going to look the same because it is not controlled in light balance. As you can see here, very yellow, but we can easily kind of correct that color balance throughout and things really. So that's with that real cheap kind of little look. So at around about the same price, in fact, if you look around on the likes of some of the resale sites like eBay and things, you will definitely find yourself some fluorescent kind of cold light. Now, if you're going to be photographing a lot of ice cream, what you don't want is hot light coming towards anything. But fluorescent, even though this is going to be very, very bright, it's not going to be hot at any stage. So we can control the actual length of time. So this is the fluorescent light in exactly the same way. In fact, I've gained myself 2/3 of a stop, the difference in that. Let's just do the shot again. Now, this is a daylight fluorescent bulb, okay? So this is going to give us accurate color. We've had them for pretty much about 13 or 14 years now. In fact, the video boys use them more than me. But it's a great kind of little bit of light that you can kind of use. Now, I talked about the difference in the light. So we talked about a speed light technology here. We talked about the likes of, let me just push this in place again. We talked about the big light box running behind. We talked about the LED as well. But of course, what we can do is put in some form of diffuser. Now, this will really, really knock the exposure down quite a lot, of course. But again, if you're looking for a bigger light source, diffuse it with some way. A true diffuser has nothing like lines or whatever. Let me just grab a very old diffuser. This is about 30 years old, and when I used to do workshops, they used to get nicked so often, I asked Last Light to stick my name on them. So basically this allows the light to actually get diffused. So this is a big light source, a bit like a softbox now, so we could get that light much, much closer to the pizza. Obviously with that in place, let me just control the shutter speed, so I need a little bit more. Okay, so the same light, yep, just diffused now, will give us that softer kind of quality, as you can see there. So it's just not about the light source in front, it's about its directional reflectancy, anything that we're adding in towards the scene. So remember, my preferred look is going to be a daylight look. It's going to be used with a big softbox coming in from behind. Remember, that's just quickly swapping back to my studio flash. That gives me the look and the feel and the design that I like. But in the same way, if I wanted to use the likes of a speed light in the image, no problem. So I talked about the lighting. We talked about a little bit about the reflectancy, whether it's going to be card or foil. Another little bit of a trick is to use the likes of a mirror to just focus some light in. I'm not sure how kind of clear that was on camera when I put that in, Brandon. Could you see that? Yeah, but remember that is coming from the actual fluorescent tube. It won't have any effect here when I'm photographing with the flash. It might reflect a little bit on the front of the actual board and so on with it, but realistically, it's not doing much. What it will do though, I should have done that before we got going. Let's switch off the flash again. We're down to about 1/10, I think, was it? No. Here we go. So let's turn that mirror off a minute. So lights off. This is just the fluorescent light, giving us our kind of look. Let's come in, okay? Now watch when we put the mirror in, how we kind of bring the accent in across some of the likes of the leaf and so on with it. and we just start to actually bring that alive. And you can start to actually really work with a mirror, as long as you're coming in at the angle, a little bit like pool or billiards, where you're kind of bouncing balls off a cushion. Really what we're doing in the world of photography is we're bouncing light off different surfaces to change its characteristic. So that's us. The main lighting that I would look at for you when you're getting going in food photography is daylight first. The next one I would do is basically a white wall with a flash bouncing off it, coming washed back to create, as I just showed to you, that lovely kind of lighting, to get kind of the washout effect, yes? So let me just do that again for you. 125th at 4, flash on. And then basically that is giving us our kind of lovely kind of afternoon glow. And obviously the lower I go down, I shoot in towards the light, we're going to get a different effect. So daylight is number 1 for me. Bouncing off a wall is number 2. Speed light probably is number 3, especially if I'm working on location, because I still want some artificial light. LED is great for cocktails and all that kind of thing, especially when we've got ice and I'm working very, very close up with it. And that's it for us today. I hope you've enjoyed this kind of introduction into lighting for food photography. As far as the kind of the positioning for food, there's basically only really 3 positions. That's the point of view when you're low down looking in. 45 like we are here now, where we're actually at an angle, so anything from the kind of the flat lay, which is the overhead looking down, to the POV, which is the flat image, is basically technically a 45, even obviously the angle will change there a touch. But as I said, really what I'm looking for, best camera for the job is whatever you've got at hand, and that could even be your iPhone. I really don't care what it is, just take the photograph. Questions there, Brandon?